This is my 35mm f1.4 Sigma art lens that I'm using with my Sony A7 IV body, and I want to show you some example images here. So firstly, I took photos showing the foreground and the background blurred. So here you can see that I focused on the foreground, which was this 11mm 1.8 lens that I have. You can see that the background is beautifully blurred out. You'd have no idea where this image was taken, and only when I go to this image can you kind of see that these are the cabinets in my kitchen. That's the microwave hanging up here, but the blur is so beautiful at f1.4 that the background just melts away like butter. It's really gorgeous. You can see here that the sharpness is pretty good. You can see there's a little bit of chromatic aberration on the optical steady shot icon here and on the left side at f1.4, but this 28mm is perfectly in focus, and you can see all the little details. You can see the dust and dirt that is in the rubber of this lens right here, and you can see the Sony logo also at the top. So again, a comparison, this is with focusing on the background, this is with focusing on the foreground. This is the exact same setup, and the images look beautiful. Here's another image I took. You can see this is my waterfall case for my MacBook Pro. Looks beautiful. We have this nice foreground blur on the Google Home that was in the front. You can see my tripod way in the back blurred out. There's a portrait of me that's printed. So the blur is gorgeous. Again, when we zoom in, we can see all the details, and you can see that shallow depth of field. So even the left side of the case is blurred out. We have sort of our sharpest focus right here on this spot, and then the laptop falls into a nice blur. This means that you have to be very careful when selecting your focus point. As you can see, I was taking this photo of my dog, and the focus is clearly on the nose and the teeth. You can see all the detail here. We could see into her gums and her yellowing teeth and all the decay and stuff like that. So you have to make sure you put the right focus point on. You can see here, I put it onto the eyes, and so we have a little bit better focus. Sorry, wrong image. Here's the eyes. There we have much better focus. You can see the reflection of me and the camera lens right there in the eye. We have a ton of detail, beautiful, sharp lens. And then just as an example here, I also set the focus to her rear, so you can see how blurred out the face is. And so you can see that this goes through basically the entire focal planes. Not sure why my computer was glitching there. One other thing I want to mention is that if you're shooting on a full frame camera, that means you can go into the APS-C crop mode. So you can see this was 50 millimeters taken on full frame. So if I go to the data here, you can see focal length is 35 here. If I go into this image, you can see the focal length is actually 52 because this is in the APS-C crop mode. So you can see that I took this image from the same spot. Let me zoom out on both. One moment here. So took this image in the exact same spot. Here it is at 35 in full frame mode. Here it is in the crop sensor mode. So you can see it's essentially like having a 35 and a 50 in one lens. Of course, you're going to lose some resolution and some megapixels here, but it is nice to have that. Lastly, for you portrait photographers, I want to show you a portrait that I took with it. This is raw, straight out of the camera, then with a little bit of basic just contrast and light editing, also doing a 16:9 crop. You can see that the image becomes this. So it is a phenomenal lens for all sorts of photography. It's definitely not a macro or wildlife focused lens, but if you're doing some like photojournalism type stuff, if you're just using a walk around lens for street photography or even landscapes, portraits, this lens is phenomenal with its beautiful f1.4 aperture that it gets. Hopefully these sample images helped you figure out if it's the right lens for you. I highly recommend it. I always find some sort of use for it, but keep in mind it is on the heavier side. It weighs over 1 pound. It's actually very close to 1.5 pounds. So for its size and its usage, it's a pretty heavy lens to carry around, but it's awesome.